this for?
Tell him to go to hell, Nick. Don't ever...
By the time you listen to this, you will have 30 minutes to rescue your partner. The watch is already counting down. At the end of that time, a small but powerful bomb will explode under him. You can find him in the old Harris generating station. There will be 2 ground rules. 1, you must do this alone, unarmed and on foot, or your partner will die. And 2, while you're hunting for your partner, I'll be hunting you. Oh, and one more thing. Ordinarily, the prize would be $2 million in cash, but what would cash mean to one of your kind? Yes, I got a good look at you earlier tonight. I know what you are. I know what I'll be dealing with.
Welcome back, friends.
Welcome back.
It's time for another episode, a Forever Night episode, and an important piece of business before we get started. The Forever Night episodes will be moving. I'm going to start telling everybody this at the beginning of every pod, because that way everybody gets a chance to hear it.
Right. We already have multiple groups of listeners.
Yeah.
For our different categories of episodes. So we're just going to make
different podcast streams
for each one.
This way you don't have to sift through all the stuff we do to find your favorites. So the Forever Night episodes will be moving to their own stream under their own title. Come in 81 Kilo.
With custom artwork.
I'm so excited. Of course, 81 Kilo is Nick and Skanky.
It's the call sign for Nick's car.
So they will now be Come in 81 Kilo, a Forever Night podcast. But for now, they will still be under our Strange and Beautiful Book Club stream. So, hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to the Strange and Beautiful Book Club. So this was a season 2 episode. Season 2, episode 7, Hunted. And before we get started, I feel like we need to address something that has been weighing heavily on me for the last couple of episodes. And we haven't really talked about it. And that is, why is Nick's coat 5 fucking sizes too big for him? It is so big, it swallows his hands.
Which coat is this?
The black coat with the 18-inch shoulder pads. And then the sleeves are so long, only his fingertips stick out the end. He literally has to pull back and hold the end of the sleeve to keep it from falling over his hand when he's acting.
I'm trying to visualize this, and I don't recall that.
Well, now you'll see it.
Now I'll see it.
Did they run out of money in the budget? Was this the fashion? What is happening?
He's wearing Stone Tree's old coat.
Why is his coat? Yeah, maybe it's like a nostalgia thing. It's his black. I mean, it's black and it's real flowy, which is nice.
Which is his vibe. Yeah.
Fucking gigantic. It's huge. Huge.
That's what she said.
I just want to put if you haven't noticed it yet, you're welcome. It makes his shoulders look huge. It makes his arms look tiny. It's just a very unfortunate choice. And it made me realize how much I miss the styling from season 1.
The outfits were really nice in season 1.
And it pains me to say this, miss the purple members only jacket.
It's iconic.
At least it fit him. At least he didn't have to physically hold the sleeves to keep them from falling over his hands.
Maybe it's like a sensory sensitivity thing.
Yeah.
And I like sweaters that cover my hands.
Maybe.
It feels very comforting.
Yeah, but he's acting.
Well, maybe he just wants to be comfortable when he's acting.
He's not making his daily commute from the bed to the desk beside the bed.
much.
I don't know. You know what I miss? Okay, so I was thinking about this because I have always said I liked season 2 best. And I do still. I think there's some really quality episodes in season 2 that we just haven't gotten to yet. But I had never sat and watched season 1 through from start to finish. And I miss the gritty sincerity of the writing in season 1. As wild as it was, I kind of miss season 1. I feel like the last 3 episodes have been like, oh, well, these aren't my favorite, but this part's okay. Well, this isn't my favorite, but this part's okay.
Oh, but it's a pattern. It's happening over and over again.
Yeah, we're not peaking. We've been valleying for too long here. And I think we're going to get to some good episodes. I just forgot how many season 2 episodes were like, that's all right. It was okay. I think the first one was made as like a Hail Mary to the universe. Like, let's create this completely off the wall, completely undone, untried thing, a police procedural with a horror element. Let's try it and see what happens. And then
and there was no like top-down feedback on how to do it.
Right.
But now,
right. Well,
maybe
we've
they're
slipped
saying
into the mainstream a little bit more.
Right.
Like we had to become a little bit more marketable because now
they had to sell it to a studio.
Right. And now it's getting more of an audience. You have to appeal to more people. It's got to match more couches.
Match more couches.
You
I
know,
haven't heard that line.
well,
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
but
It's got to go with more stuff.
Right.
And I think we lost the cool
it dilutes
lighting.
it a little bit.
Yeah, we lost the cool lighting in the Raven where they always had that cool multicolored lighting. Now it's a set and it's fine. It's fine that it's a set, but we just lost a lot of that gritty.
Changes the aesthetic.
Yeah, we lost that gritty sincerity. And I don't think it makes it a bad show, but I think we just lost like that tiny little piece of we are all in this to try something new magic.
The experimental vibe.
Yeah. So this is season 2, episode 7, Hunted, which is actually one of the episodes I like more.
Yeah.
Than some of the previous ones. And I think it's because we get to see Nick doing vampire stuff, which we haven't seen in a couple of episodes. I mean, we see it like a little bit, but we haven't been like, he hasn't been hopping out of the car and taking off at every random moment, unless you count Forward into the Past, in which he did a lot of weird vampire stuff, which
Yes.
I calculated the distance between where I found the street intersection.
This is a topic that we brought up in a previous episode.
Yes.
Where I guess it was in Forward into the Past.
Right.
Where I posited, could Nick fly across the ocean in a night?
Yeah.
Or does he have to take a plane? So I left it at that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I left it at that. And maybe, I thought maybe it would pop into my mind at some point during the day and I'd be bored. And okay, let's calculate some things. Well, Rachel took it upon herself.
I calculated it. All right, so from that intersection, the intersection that he's at, Garamond and Winford, to Hamilton, the center of Hamilton, is 50 miles.
Okay, and how fast did he travel 50 miles?
Well, we don't know the amount of time it took him, but we have to assume it was faster to travel there flying than by car. And it's kind of like it's around a bay. So it's like if he goes by car, it's 50 miles, but straight across the water is probably a little bit shorter.
Okay.
So say it took him 25 minutes. That would be 100.
Twice as fast as a car. And we're saying it would take about an hour to drive it.
Yeah.
But it had to be faster for him to fly. And so we'll just throw out a nice round number and say he goes half the time for him to fly that distance.
Right. Well, even if he's traveling at 200 miles an hour. So say he's traveling at 200 miles an hour, which would get him there in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
The distance from London to Hamilton, which is where he goes, is 3,584 miles.
Okay.
So even traveling 200 miles an hour, it would take him 18 hours to get from London to Hamilton, Canada.
So using those rough numbers, no, he
No.
could not fly
Nick
across
could
the ocean.
not fly himself across the Atlantic Ocean from London to, he may have been able to make it to the coast and pause,
Yeah.
but he could not in one flight make it from London to Hamilton or Toronto.
Right.
So let's just put this to rest.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
This is our first approximation measurement
Right.
of how fast. There's two different questions. How fast can Nick fly, and how fast does Nick fly?
Well, I think we can assume he flies as fast as he can possibly fly to get
But it
to
might mess
Catherine.
up his hair.
Well, okay, so if you want to talk about hair, when we had the episode where we saw him flying, which was Dying to Know You, the one with the psychic.
Yep.
He was carrying the psychic and flying her to a hospital, which again, we have to assume he was flying as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to have a conversation, and neither one of them had hair that was moving with any amount of wind.
That's an abstraction that was hidden from us for the sake of filming.
You could not hold a conversation at 200 miles an hour. However, he may have been flying at human speed so that he would not harm her.
Right.
Because a unprotected human flying at 200 miles an hour would probably have some issues. Assume you hit a bug at 200 miles an hour.
Okay, so
It's like when a straw goes through a telephone pole during a tornado.
okay, so to summarize, we have one data point
Yes.
on how fast Nick flies,
Right.
and generously, it's 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So I'll be paying attention
Okay.
to future episodes where he flies,
Okay.
where we have a distance that we can, like, we know the start and end locations, and we have, a tighter timestamp
Yeah.
on his destination and arrival times. And then we can get a second data point and see if there's some numbers there.
Some variation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as the data stands right now, Nick could not fly across the Atlantic Ocean
Right.
under his own power.
But if he got up to 400 miles an hour, he could do it in 9 hours, which, depending on the time of year,
What's the speed of sound?
300 miles an hour?
Would Nick create a sonic boom when he
Absolutely.
went past the barrier, the sound barrier?
Anything going faster than
So
speed
if
of
you're
sound
ever
creates a
out
sonic
at
boom.
night and you hear a sonic boom and you don't know what it's from, that was a vampire breaking the speed of sound barrier. Okay, well, we're just going to leave this.
Oh, no, speed of sound is, I'm thinking meters,
Oh, okay.
is 300. It's 767 miles per hour.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, he'd have to travel a lot faster. Than that. Just the thought of
maybe
him. Just the thought of him, like, with the,
Maybe he could get up to Mach 0.5.
sorry.
Oh, and the higher you go altitude-wise,
Yeah.
the lower the air pressure is, and the lower the air pressure is, the lower the speed of sound is, though.
Oh, so Nick
So-
at high altitude might create a sonic boom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was a guy for, was it Red Bull? Somebody did like a high atmosphere jump from this balloon. His name was almost on my tongue, but it slid off. Anyway, when he jumped from the way high upper atmosphere,
Yeah.
technically at human terminal velocity
He
at
broke
that
the sound
altitude,
barrier.
he broke the sound barrier.
Nice. So here's another question. If he does, for some reason, fly himself directly from London to Toronto, when you do that, you don't fly straight across the Atlantic Ocean because that's not a straight line. You end up going up and over like Greenland.
Right.
You go
yes.
north.
Yeah, the shortest path. Does he take into account
Yes. Does he take
curvature
into
of
account
the Earth?
the curvature of the Earth? And if he flies high enough over a northern enough area, considering he doesn't have his own body temperature and he doesn't have a heartbeat,
Could he freeze?
will he freeze solid?
Oh, it depends on whether the liquid in his body would crystallize. Or is it like if you add salt to water, it drops the freezing temperature.
Yeah.
I think we're getting a little too deep into,
All right. Well,
into
so
the
now that we've
physics
covered
of
that.
vampires.
Night. Toronto.
Oh, yes, at the start of the episode.
Yes. A man in army surplus gear is walking tensely down the street.
Oh, yeah, he's on high alert. He's wound up tight.
And I think it's really funny. This guy is William Bartholomew Yates.
Yeah, the character's name.
Yeah, which is not what WB
Hoity-toity
stands
name.
for. And it's also W or YATES, not YEATS. But it's an
Okay.
oblique reference. WB Yeats, the poet.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. But he's running around. He's like, I'm sorry, you derailed me completely. Now I'm like in do vampires freeze solid mode. He's very anxious, obviously, like he's being hunted, one might say, because he sees people walking down the street. He gets scared. He pulls a knife, which he pulls a knife out of his boot, and then he doesn't keep it in his hand. He like resheathes it in his.
Yeah, he keeps putting it back in his boot.
Yeah.
All right, the question is,
Maybe he runs faster without it. in
is
his
it
hand.
still paranoia if people are actually after you?
Yeah, I don't
And the
know.
answer is yes.
Yes.
It's still paranoia.
Right. I mean, it's just justified paranoia.
It's justified
Right.
paranoia.
And he ends up going up to a trash can and he starts rooting in this trash can, which I love how trash cans always only have dry, wadded up paper in them in television shows and movies. It's never somebody's nasty leftovers. It's never barf.
Pour out their half a coffee,
Yeah, it's never a half full cup of coffee. It's always dry paper.
scoop out their Chinese takeout.
Right. And we hear a beep and he looks at his watch, which this watch would have been a lot more impressive in 1994.
Yes.
Now we're like, oh, that's like a Walmart watch, but this is an expensive watch because it's got a stopwatch
Got
on
to
it.
put on our context
We got to
lenses.
put on our context lenses. This is an expensive ass watch. It's like the ones that had a little calculator on them. I wanted one of those so bad because of the tiny little buttons.
I had one. It was not really usable.
It doesn't matter. It was the look. It was so futuristic. But he's got like 2 minutes or something left on his watch, and he hears a beep, and then he looks over, and someone has thrown a gun, and it's just laying there on the ground for him. So he runs over and picks it up, and he ends up shooting kind of off.
Right.
At a
He
wall.
starts shooting, and we don't know what he's shooting at.
Right, and then he gets shot once and just
So at
Dead.
this point, we just think he's tripping on something.
right.
Right,
Well, except
that's-
for the gun.
Right. But then the gun shows up. Okay. Things have escalated. Is he now hallucinating a gun?
Yeah, but then we get our
But
patented
then-
only the end of the gun
Yeah.
shot.
And now we know shit's serious.
Right. You're like, oh, he's about to get murdered. If he wasn't, we'd see the whole hand. But no, we only
Right.
see the muzzle. He gets shot once and he's dead. And then, we're at the intro. Sun rising over Toronto. And then we get our moment of comic relief for the episode, which is the beginning of our Skanky subplot.
What is our skanky subplot?
Skanky versus Myra won't let him get a word in edgewise. Because he's on the phone and he's like, Myra, honey. Well,
Particularly about the vacation that she's planning.
yeah. He's like, I can't. When are we going to go to the Gulf of St. Lawrence? And she must have said something like right now because the whales are getting ready to mate. And he's like, mating season. You want to watch whales mate, honey? And then he's like, what's that, Captain? And he goes, sorry, paperwork's piling up. I got to go. He's just sitting at his desk by himself.
Yeah.
Cohen didn't call him at all.
Myra, can I just interject something here? When am I going to have time to visit the Gulf of St. Lawrence? I mean, the whales can wait. I mean, mating season is a month. You want to watch whales mate? Why, honey? Yeah, right, Captain. Listen, honey, I got to get going. Work is just piling up here. Yes, I'll call you later. I love you, too.
I hope that's Myra.
You know, she says we never talk, so I call her up, and she ends up doing all the talking. Usually about the vacation we'll never have.
At least she's including you.
And he ends up hanging up, and we get kind of this is supposed to be a comedic interaction, and maybe it is. I don't know. I'm so fucking distracted by his coat at this point. Nick sits on his desk, and he's like, I hope that was Myra, because Skanky ends with,
love you.
I love you. Yeah. And we just get kind of a back and forth. It's sort of a partnership building moment here where they get like a haha, buddy. Oh yeah, by the way, somebody else got killed. Now this is number 6. Oh, okay. So we're on to the plot now.
It's a
fine.
serial killer.
It's a serial killer, which I think they use that word.
They don't use the word serial killer.
No. And
It just occurred to me now.
yeah. And so Skanky and Nick are like, well, are there any witnesses? And Skanky goes, no, there was a bunch of people in the square. Nobody saw anything. In fact, one of them thinks he's Napoleon. And Nick goes,
yeah, because it's
no,
a bunch of like homeless
Rasputin.
people. Or
yeah, he goes,
whatever.
no,
Or
Rasputin.
unhomed people.
Right. On people experiencing homelessness. Yes. And we find out that this is number 6. And all of them have a gun. None which
And the same watch.
yeah, and not the exact same watch, but 6 identical watches.
Right.
Yeah. And the gun doesn't ever match what they got shot with. So the gun isn't the murder weapon. So someone is giving them a gun and then killing them with a different weapon. And so they go in and talk to Cohen about it. And Cohen's basically like, this is number 6. We need to get our shit together. We need to figure this out and get this wrapped up. And we need to
We're
get
a
it wrapped
laughing
up.
stock.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. And Skanky's like, well, I call him the garbage man. And then crickets. And then they move on.
The emotional bid from Skanky.
Right. And then he calls him Monsieur Le Garbage. Monsieur Garbage. He uses the word garbage man or some variation of garbage man like 5 times before somebody finally acknowledges him. Yeah, it's an emotional bid. Poor Skanky. He's like, anyone going to ask? Anyone going to ask? Matt does this all the time. Just make a bald statement and then just wait. But no. And then they go to the morgue. And Natalie, they get a rundown from Natalie, which Natalie is involved in a lot of cases. She's doing like a lot of different things. And she
does every aspect of forensics.
And she always weighs in on their cases. They're always like, well, what do you think? And sometimes she'll be like, I don't fucking know. I'm not the detective. And sometimes she'll be like, I have a theory. But Natalie listens to true crime podcasts.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what's on her radio when she's headed home all the time. Because she's always got a theory. And Skanky's eating. That's not a subplot, but he's eating. And it's only to highlight it's to underscore what he says, because he ends up going off on like a rant about man's instinctual drive to hunt. And then he's eating like a hot dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hunting people.
Hey, why not? It's instinct. We were born to hunt. It's in our blood. Okay, so it's not necessary anymore. But if you want to understand man's primal self, you got to understand it's all about the hunt. Man against nature.
Against nature, that's perfect.
You know what I mean?
Skanky, people are dying here.
Jeez, Nick, would you relax? It's just a philosophical conversation.
Yeah, because Natalie says this guy was rural wired. He was on like PCP and methamphetamines. She said his blood pressure had to be over 250. He was a ticking time bomb. And she points out that the pattern of the killings is very consistent, where they started out with people experiencing homelessness, and then they moved on to more and more dangerous victims. And now it's what does she call him? A like skinhead knife fighter?
Yes.
Yeah. And Nick is like, yeah, they're escalating the thrill. I should know. He could end up almost every hunting statement in this entire episode with just, I should know. Like, oh, yeah, I've done that. It's fine. And then it sends him to a flashback. It's so poignant for him.
Right. And once again, it's a very relevant to the case flashback.
Yeah, and it's one of the few flashbacks where they are interacting as a family. Like, Lacroix planned an outing. He was like, they were all at home watching TV.
We're going on a family trip to the woods.
They were all at home watching TV or whatever, reading books, whatever was appropriate for the time period, which looks like it's like 1830s-ish based on our Edwardian attire that we've got going. And he's like, okay, guys, we're all hungry. It's time to go get dinner. And they're like, okay, fine. We'll just go grab something out of the alley out back or whatever. And he's like, no, let's go on an adventure. Who's up for an adventure? And they're like, oh, God, fine,
We're
Dad.
going to go forage.
Fine, Dad, whatever. And so they go out to the forest. And poor Jeanette is in this dress, this like big
I know Lacroix
dress.
is having this long rant about how much more of a thrill it is to be out in the wild hunting and
Yeah.
you know,
Aren't you guys glad I planned this trip?
not using your special vampire powers
Yeah,
to
just
make
being
it
a
easy.
hunter. Yeah. And she's like, easy for you guys to say. You don't have 17 yards of fabric around your waist.
Right. So he's talking about the thrill of the chase and
Yeah.
all this stuff. And Jeanette's over here just trying to like get through the
Yeah,
underbrush.
just try to walk through the sticks. I mean, they've got some billowy cloaks on, which end up looking really cool when they're running around, but it's nothing compared to the skirt that she's wearing. Plus, she's got these puffy sleeves. And she has a hat, which has this long crinoline thing hanging out the back. There's a lot going on with her wardrobe, and it's not forest ready. Maybe Lacroix should have provided a brief before they went on the adventure. Like, I'm not going to tell you guys where we're going, but here's what you need to wear. Like when you take your kids to Disney World and you're like, just put your bathing suit on under your clothes. Don't ask me why. You're going to love it. I promise. But they are hunting a hunter, which is what's relevant to what's going on because
Right.
that's what Skanky and Nick are doing. They are pursuing a hunter. They are hunting a hunter.
Right. And it's also relevant to the perpetrator themselves because
Right.
that's what they're doing. So there's lots of levels to this analogy.
Yeah, and Skanky tries the garbage man thing again. He's like, I'm telling you, he's the garbage man. And Nick is literally
Nick's
like,
finally like, "Oh, all right, I'll
fine,
bite.
fine. Why are we calling him the garbage man? He's like, because he takes out the trash.
Wait, hold on. I think Nick actually uses the phrase, okay, I'll bite.
Yeah, he says, okay, I'll bite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are we calling him the garbage man? And Skanky goes, because he takes out the trash. And Natalie and Nick both are like, oh, God, like, it's so bad. And Nick chastises him. He's like, people are dying here. This isn't a fucking joke. And Skanky's like, it was a little bit funny.
Well, Nick made a joke too.
I know, but
The
it's not
vampire
same.
saying, I'll bite.
Yeah. I mean, yes, but that was his own, like, haha.
Internal
personal-
joke
Yeah.
with him and Natalie.
Right. It was a
Inside joke.
inside joke. God, why did that leave me? I was like, I don't know what that is called. Inside joke. But we go back to the precinct. We have a lot of them working together to try to solve this case, which we don't get very often, where they're
It's
actually
because it's an important case.
they are actually talking to each other and working together because they've literally broken out pins and red string and they're standing over by this map and they have like the pins all around their precinct and they have the red line all drawn to them. And Skanky is reading out some of the witness statements to try to like generate some new ideas, brainstorm for them. And he says that they have a psych profile and there's so little connecting these different murders that the psych profile literally checked the pattern against the moon like it's a werewolf. And Nick's like, well, psychology's not an exact science.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Stone Tree's not around right now, so it's probably not him.
Maybe it is.
But then they come up with the brilliant idea of going undercover. They're like, why don't we go out on the turf? Like,
How did they convince Cohen
they just
that
said
them
it.
going undercover would actually help, like, be an effective strategy to root out?
They're literally just like, let's go undercover. Let's get out on the street. Yeah. And Skanky goes, yeah, let's go street. Like, let's just get on the turf. Let's get down with the people and see what the word on the street is. See if we can figure out what's going on. And so he's like, yeah,
It's so contrived.
right. And they're literally like, okay,
But-
we'll go hit up.
But it's a good gag.
It works because they're like, oh yeah, let's go right now. We'll hit up the department wardrobe for a new outfit. It'll be great. And so
Nick does not use the department wardrobe.
no, Nick's like, I think I'm just gonna go home. I literally have an entire room devoted to clothes. I'll put on my Edwardian cloak. And then I'll head out. He puts on his
The last time I went hunting.
We haven't seen his work shirt. His like 18th century peasant shirt that he wears when he does stuff.
With the frilly, with the frills on the front and on the
Yeah.
cuffs.
Oh, R.I.P. 18th century work shirt.
Well, we'll keep our eyes out.
Yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes. But I don't think it comes back. It
I'm
doesn't,
going to be paying more attention to
doesn't
the
fit
fashion
well
now,
under a
'cause you keep
vest.
bringing things up.
doesn't fit well under a vest, which he's wearing a vest this entire episode.
Yes.
It's like a check pattern vest too. It's not even black. It's so bad.
Even in his undercover clothes,
Right.
he's
Of
wearing
course.
like this tattered 3-piece suit. It's like a 1920s or 30s. Everybody wore like your daily wear
Yeah.
was a 3-piece suit.
But Skanky's straight out of the 70s. He's got the big.
Yes.
They must have.
And he is hamming it up.
Well, he does admit that he's only wearing this because it's the only thing Department Wardrobe had for him.
I wonder if John Kapelos just said,
It's fine,
I'll bring
I
my
got
own
this.
outfit from home.
I'll surprise you guys.
I have something I
Yeah.
think everybody will love.
And that's probably why they put the trench coat over top of it. His usual khaki trench coat, which Nick points out. Well, they meet each other on the street. First, Skanky's walking along doing like the coin flip, which we should have had Kojak the Night Stalker
Oh, yeah.
playing over the entire time he's walking because he's the most obvious cop. Like, John Kapelos is not a cop, but he is pretending to be a cop, pretending to not be a cop, who absolutely looks like a cop.
Yeah.
And he ends up meeting up with Nick. And Nick does this like, hey, buddy, you got some change.
Hey, buddy. Yeah, got some change. I think so. Yeah, what's with the...
Gravelly voice. Gravelly voice because I live on the street.
Because I'm from the streets. So bad. It's so funny. So bad all at the same time. But they like walk up to each other and then he literally says it. And then in his regular voice, he's like, what's with the clothes? Or what's with the trench coat?
Right.
And Skanky's like, that's the only thing they had for me. And he like flashes his 70s suit. And then he goes back to the like, it's for coffee. Like every other sentence is in character. And then back to Nick. And then back to the character he's playing. And when he leaves, another person walks up to Skanky for change, and he's like, "No, get the fuck out of here!" He's like, "What do I look like, a bank?" And he literally says, "This place is a hornet's nest with snakes in it." And Nick is like, yeah, I don't want to be out here. I'm getting bored. I've been standing over here asking for change. Nobody's walked up and handed me a watch and told me that they're going to kill me in 30 minutes. This isn't working. And so he walks away and he ends up taking off. And if
he's
the
like,
angle
let's go fly around.
if the angle of the camera is too big, I mean, this is a busy street, and he walks like 10 feet off to the
Right.
left, and then
And
he's
just
like
hops into the air.
Push, he whooshes off, and if the angle of the camera is to be believed, he's like 20 feet off the ground, so he's
And he's
clearly
just following this
visible.
like moped motorcycle.
Yeah, this guy drives by on a motorcycle, and he's like, I don't know, that looks suspicious. Somebody riding a motorcycle down the
I'm just
street.
gonna follow. I'm gonna tail him
So he tails him
from
down.
tree height.
And he ends up turning down this alley, and Nick like lands and scares a cat. And the guy turns around, and there's nobody there because Nick could be stealthy when he wants to be, I guess. Although he's just like clinging to the wall next to all green lights. I don't know. But this guy gets to the end, and he's rooting around in these cans. And then
These big barrels.
right. And we see, like, we hear a gun click. He turns around to try to, like, oh no, is there somebody back there?
Yeah, the guy pulls out his gun and chambers around.
Right. And then we see the end of the gun from earlier. And so does Nick, because he ends up jumping between the gun and the biker guy and getting shot with absolutely zero chill as usual. I think he just jumps over there, fangs out,
Yeah.
facing the unknown gun person.
Right. At least he's back. He has his back
at least
to the.
at least by the so he
biker
gets
guy.
shot by our unknown assailant, and then he turns back to the biker. And by the time he turns back to the biker, he's got his shit together. He's in I'm getting shot
Which is
mode,
uncharacteristic.
which is uncharacteristic because this guy shoots him a bunch, so he gets shot like a bunch. Yeah. So the mystery figure makes off with the briefcase as the watch hits 0. And then we cut to...
We have our first survivor.
Yeah, we have our
of this
first
serial
survivor because
killer.
the biker has survived thanks to Nick's timely intervention. And Skanky has arrived in the alley, and so has a bunch of other cops.
Right. They probably all heard the gunshots.
Yeah, he really does. And then this part, so Skanky is talking to the biker. And they need Nick to not be a part of this conversation because we need Skanky to have this conversation by himself, just script-wise.
Right.
And so the only thing they have him that he can do is inspect these cans.
He's
these
just walking back and forth
just-
in front of the same barrels,
pacing back
just
and
kind
forth
of peering down into them.
in front of these barrels for what probably is like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah,
of him just
of in-world time.
of in-world time of him just no one is over there. It's not part of the scene that's being processed. He's literally just in the corner facing away from everybody, stalking back and forth while Skanky and this biker have a conversation because
So
Skanky
what do you think Nick is thinking in this scene? Is he like,
he's
"Shit,
probably
shit,
waiting
shit.
for all of the
They saw
bullets
me
to
get
pop
shot
out.
a whole bunch."
He's probably waiting for all the bullets to pop out. He doesn't want to be standing over there talking to people
Or
while his chest is healing and a bullet goes
Oh,
complete.
maybe his lungs are punctured, and so he can't actually talk right now. So he's waiting for
a lot.
he's waiting for his chest to heal enough
Yeah.
that he can actually go and talk, and he's not like leaking stuff.
Right. And he doesn't want anybody to see it happening. And he's kind of got to stay away from everybody because he's got like 17 holes in his hopefully not department issue wear because department also issues you your bulletproof vest. And he wasn't issued one of those.
Right.
So there's going to be questions if he takes this jacket back full of bullet holes.
Right.
So he's probably thinking it through. Okay, so I got to go home. I got to take my stuff off.
Right.
I'll
How
put
do
it
I
down.
spin this so that I don't get caught
Right.
with bullet holes in my body? and and then when he finally comes over, Skanky's like, "Gotta love Kevlar."
Yeah, and Nick's like, yep.
Yeah, sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so Skanky holds up this gun to the biker, and he's like, just for shits and giggles.
At
where'd you
least
get
it's
this?
in an evidence
Plastic
bag.
Yes.
Yep.
He's like, just for shits and giggles, where'd you get this? And the guy's like, that cop is dead. Accurate. But not for the reason he thinks. Because Skanky's like, well, he's obviously not dead. Can we go back to the gun? Where did you get the gun? And the guy's
Is this
like,
yours? He's like, "It's not my gun."
no, he's like, no, you don't understand. I shot that guy like a bunch. I shot that dude a lot. And Skanky's like, yeah, Kevlar. And the guy goes,
You
no,
think
no.
we're amateurs?
Yeah, the guy's like, no. That wasn't Kevlar. That was him. Like, I was shooting him.
That cop's dead. I shot him.
Hey, well, thanks for the confession. That's real thoughtful of you. But are you the legally registered owner of this fine 9mm semi-automatic weapon?
Didn't you hear what I said? I shot him. He just stood there.
Yeah, right. Well, do you think we're stupid, my friend? Huh?
No, it didn't look like. It looked like it was just him.
Right. Okay.
I would love it if we had this with squibs. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we got a bullet splatter, like a blood splatter.
Right.
Instead of
But
the powder splatter.
As we know, vampires, unless they've recently fed, do not have blood in their bodies.
Do we know that? Do we?
Wait, I've heard it. A little bird told me that.
Once, a long time ago. And then the birdie
And
flew
never
off and
mentioned it
everybody
again.
probably forgot. Yes. But Nick is so carried away by this moment. It sets him adrift in time, and we end up back in our flashback. And this is when they find the hunter by the fire. Which, did LaCroix plan this? Did he watch this guy and know this guy went out? Or they literally just go in the woods like, hunters live in woods. If we go to the woods, there'll be a hunter there.
Hunters, it's woods. There's hunters
There's
in
hunters.
woods.
Yeah.
It's part of the
Or
natural
maybe
order
it's
of
like
things.
when you're hunting a deer and you put out like a salt lick or you put out like you put out a bait trap. He literally set a bunch of wood next to a fire ring and was like, that'll
Some
get one.
hunter will find this.
That'll get one. It's fine. But I love this part because sometimes you can tell that Garrett Wynn Davies is primarily a stage actor. For the most part, he does a pretty good job of being just
of doing like
of doing television acting.
film presence on screen.
But every once in a while, he can't help it.
He
And
pulls out the stage
and the
presence.
stage just slips right on out. And you can see it when he walks into frame. So we have our hunter and he's sitting at the fire. And LaCroix walks directly at the camera. And when
And Jeanette is off to the side,
Jeanette comes
diagonally
in,
behind LaCroix.
and when Garrett walks onto the scene, he does a very deliberate 3/4 turn, put his foot on this.
right,
log.
He's walking like right behind LaCroix, and then he turns out
Yeah,
to step to the side a
He ends
little bit.
up framing it like you would on a stage, and he
Right.
does a very stage lean where he puts his foot on this
Right, and he
log, and
kinda
then he does
fluff
like a
his
slow,
cloak out.
like fluff his cloak, like you would if you were going to stand there and deliver dialogue on a stage. There is another episode where it is very obvious he's a stage actor, and it's Curiouser and Curiouser. And the way that one is framed is he's sitting on his couch, and the camera is facing at him, and behind him is Jeanette, and Jeanette's talking to him, and he's faced away from Jeanette. And on the television screen, there's nobody in the back row. He doesn't need to move his body. He doesn't need to whatever. He could literally just sit there and be emotive, like Kurt Russell from Soldier, which we just watched. But he doesn't. He's throwing his hands up. He slips side to side on the couch. He's doing these really dramatic face gestures, like you would if you were trying to convey an emotion on a stage for people who can't necessarily see your facial expression.
Right. Yeah, you have to use a lot of body language because they may be able to hear you, but they can't see the nuance of your facial expression.
Right. But beyond that, LaCroix starts talking to the hunter, and he is being super creeper. He's like, "Don't you love it when you kill things?" And the guy's like, "I kill to eat stuff." And he's like, "Yeah, but don't be banal. You like it, don't you? You like it when you kill
enjoy
things.
it.
You enjoy it. Isn't that the best part? The
power that you have.
killing things." And the hunter's like, "You know what? Actually, I think I hear my wife, and I think I need to go.
My wife's waiting for me.
My wife and my 6 starving children are back at my house, and I got to go. I have got to go. So you guys enjoy the fire. You have a really nice night. Night. Bye." And he leaves, and LaCroix's like, "The hunt is on." And then we come back to present, and they are at the morgue. And Natalie, who is not only our autopsy,
She's not only our coroner.
not only our coroner, she's also our ballistics expert, because she's able to tell this isn't a gun by like sitting at her desk and looking in
She's
the end
able
with
to
a
tell it's
flashlight.
not the gun that fired the bullet that killed the guy.
You know what? I don't know. I don't know if in the 90s your coroner was your one-stop shop for all evidence.
Probably not for a city as big as Toronto.
Yeah, this would be a much more granular. She may be
Right.
able to give you like I don't think so. The caliber's wrong.
Like I've done this a few times and I can give you some ideas, but I'm not the person that's responsible for
Right.
producing like court level conclusions.
Right. This is a microscope thing where you put it under the microscope and you read the like scraping on the bullet and
most
stuff.
depictions that you see, like more modern depictions from like CSI and whatever, they will take the gun and they'll fire multiple bullets into like a box of sand, and then they'll retrieve the bullets and they'll compare the striations
Yeah.
on the bullet that they found in the field against the test bullets, and they'll compare multiple of them
Yeah.
and do the striations match.
Right.
Technically, you could, right? Maybe it's the caliber is different in the
Well,
gun that
she
she's
says it's
looking
the
at.
twist. You're
Right. So
looking for
there's
this amount
there's
of
these
twist.
spirals
Yeah, the
carved
lands.
into the inside, and maybe the bullet that killed the guy had like four rifle spirals on it, and maybe this gun she's looking inside, and maybe it has like 6.
Yeah.
And so that would be something that you could tell with just like a pen flashlight looking down the barrel.
If you're a ballistics expert.
Well, that would be something that someone who's slightly knowledgeable about how you identify a bullet to a gun.
Right,
would
which
be able
would
to
mean
find.
that like Skanky and Nick would probably be just as likely to be able to tell that
Exactly.
as Natalie. Yeah,
This is
it's
just an abstraction
it's
for
an
plot
it
to
is, it
combine
is.
all the facilities of
But
the...
poor Natalie, she's got a
For
lot
instance.
on her shoulders. And she literally says, "How sick do you have to be to get your thrills like this?" And then she looks directly at Nick, which I think is so funny because they're talking about
She's
like,
in on it.
yeah, she's like, "How sick do you?" I mean, that's a legitimate question.
Right, there's
Nick.
multiple
how
levels of
sick
conversation.
do you
There's-
have to be?
There's the conversation that she and Nick are having as like the inside joke
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then there's the other level of conversation from Skanky's perspective.
Yeah. And then we go back into our flashback. And they are hunting the hunter. And Jeanette is gamely trying to run through this forest. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, this is really thrilling. I'm so glad Dad took us camping. Like, This is really fun." And Nick is like, "You know what? I'm going to do something unexpected," because he knows we're
Lacroix
hunters.
runs ahead.
Yeah, he's like, he knows we're hunters and he's a hunter and he's going to do something unexpected, which this is the whole point of the flashback.
Right.
Is in order to
This
beat
is
a
his
hunter,
insight for the case.
yeah, you have to defy expectations. So he goes back to the campsite where they started. And then he comes back and Natalie's like, "Nick, UK?" And he's like, "Yeah, another time, another place." And then they just walk off and there's a toy on Natalie's desk. There's a little stuffed
rainbow
caterpillar.
caterpillar,
Yeah,
yeah.
and she had family visiting the set and they left it on her desk and nobody caught it. And now it's immortalized as part of this episode, which I think is really cute. And then we go to one of my favorite parts of this episode. You know why I like this episode so much? It's because we showcase Nick and Skanky's relationship a lot in this case.
Yeah.
Because in the last 2 or 3 episodes, they haven't really worked together on anything. In Capital Offense, he was totally rogue. In Forward into the Past, he's completely rogue. He's
Right,
not
and it's
working
all
with
about
Skanky.
his history and his story.
And their bromance is what makes the show, because Nick's relationship with the other women in the show is left so ambiguous. We're not here for it. What we're here for is the relationship between Skanky and Nick. So we finally get a little bit of the Skanky Nick magic back in this episode. I mean, we even had an episode where Skanky was actively belligerent towards Nick. So it's really nice to have them come back and be partners. And we really get to see it when they do the interrogation of the biker
Oh,
guy.
yeah, they play it up.
Oh, yes. He's like, "Oh, I see. He's going to be the good cop. You're going to be the bad cop. You're going to rough me up, whatever." And Nick's like, "No, you misunderstand me. He's not the good cop. And I'm not a good cop either. What we're going to do is we're going to ask you questions and we just want honest answers. And that's how it's going to work. And if it doesn't work that way, it's going to be real unpleasant for you because I don't like confrontation. I fucking hate it." And then they do this like,
But in this like really like loomy,
yeah.
like very close personal space
Yeah,
tone.
he gets right in his face and he's like, "I hate it." And then they do this rapid fire, like, "Okay, where were you when it happened?" And he's like, "Oh, it was at this bar." "What bar?"
Right. They keep interjecting so he can't maintain like his train of thought.
I was in this bar.
Which bar?
Hoghead.
Parkdale or North York?
Parkdale.
What time?
Boom. 3 hours.
Come on, keep going.
So I get back from the John.
What were you doing in the John?
What do you think I was doing in the
Buying or selling? We can nail you either way.
Jeez, I was taking a leak.
Please spare me the details. So
So I get back to the table and there's this itty bitty tape recorder sitting there.
did you just have a stroke?
No. I figured you guys were gonna interrupt me again.
We probably will.
Yeah, which is a good interrogation technique. It works. And he explains about how he found the tape recorder and there was a watch with it and a note. And no, he didn't keep the note. And it told him he had 30 minutes to find this briefcase that had $2 million in it, or he had to find it or he was going to get killed. And he was like, and that's it. I don't know any more than that. But that's more than they knew before. They didn't know what.
Now they finally have some information about the case.
Yeah, they finally know what all the pieces are for. And so they go out and Cohen's like, okay, well, how did it go? And they're like, oh my God, that was so much fun. I haven't had that much fun grilling somebody. Skanky says he hasn't had that much fun grilling somebody since Myra ran the car into a ditch. Ran the Cordoba into a ditch. And Cohen's like, okay, well, are we sure he's honest? And they're like, yeah, nobody can make that shit up. Not in the way we just did. Not the way we just interrogated him. And she goes, okay, well, why don't you call the RCMP behavioral unit? Matt was like, oh, the RCMP, the Mounties.
Yep.
And get some coordination. And they're like, okay, we'll go ahead and call him.
They're kind of like the Canadian equivalent of the federal investigation.
Yeah, but
maybe not the FBI, but
this is kind of a red herring-ish. Although Matt was like, oh, it's one of them. Well, no, it's not, because it's just to bridge the gap until Skanky's ready to go home.
Right. I speculated that their local RCMP contact wasn't picking up and whatever. I was like, oh, it's because it's her. She's the killer. But no.
Right.
It was a distraction.
It was a red herring because Skanky goes out. He's getting ready to head home for the day. And he gets yoinked. He gets tranquilized and yoinked. And then Nick comes out later and he goes to get in his car. And there's a tape recorder with a watch.
And a note.
And the note says, play me. So he plays it. And this is when we get our terms. And it's like, I've got your partner. Here's his voice to prove it. And it's Skanky going, don't do it. Don't come get me. Save yourself, Nick. Save yourself. And then he gets cut off. And then, which all Skanky. And then it's like, okay, you have 30 minutes to come find me. You have to come alone. You have to come unarmed. You have to come on foot. And he is in this warehouse.
And
see you there.
It's dawn.
Right. And then he looks out. And the sun is rising, which it feels really close to after he got in the car. He was cutting it real close. Or he lives like around the corner.
Right.
Or he was banking on that underground garage.
Maybe got some special glass.
Yeah.
In the windows.
Maybe.
A special UV tint.
Yeah. But this is our first like verbal interaction with the bad guy. The bad person.
Right. This is the first recording that Nick and Skanky have heard.
Right. And we immediately hop over to Skanky. And Skanky's being tied up. And he gets the blindfold pulled off his head. And it's a woman. And he's like, oh, you better watch out. There's like a real bad dude running around. And she's like, it's
wow,
me.
Skanky. Come on.
It's me. And this woman is Renta Ann. Renta Ann Foley. She's
Ann Foley?
She's the less developed version of Ann Foley from Dance by the Light of the Moon. Remember Dance by the Light of the Moon was the one with the sex worker, the stripper who seduced Nick because she liked seducing men and having them kill for her.
Yep.
This is what got me thinking like, oh, I missed season 1 a little bit because that was a good episode. Mm-hmm. And this woman just isn't Anne. So that's why we're going to refer to her as Renta Ann because we don't find out her name.
We don't find out nothing about her.
We don't find out.
Except that she kind of implies that she grew up wealthy.
Yeah. As Nick says, we know that the bad guy has money and brains. And Cohen says, a rare combination. But yeah, we don't, nothing. Except that this woman likes to hurt people. And that's it. And not even as imaginatively or as interestingly.
Just hunting them
as Ann Foley. So we're just going to call her Renta Ann. And now you know why.
Okay.
But Nick has to make his way there through the sewers because the sun has risen. Which, how does he know how to get to where he's going? And why are they
He's lived here for years.
Why are they all over 6 foot tall?
These are very unusual sewers.
Okay.
The only time that I've reasonably seen these kinds of sewers are on very old cities
Right.
where like you literally had to be able to walk it. You didn't have equipment to just dig up a sewer pipe anywhere.
Yeah. This isn't
And
the
you had to
last
have
time.
ventilation and stuff.
This isn't the last time we're going to be in the sewers. And they are as elaborate the next time we go in them too. So they're a little bit more
Right.
believable.
I wouldn't expect to see these kinds of sewers in North America,
No.
but in Europe, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, whatever. These are what the sewers look like. Here you go.
Anyway, it's a convenient plot device.
It happens because that's how he's got to get there. And he's even dodging around light in the sewers because there's light coming
Right, there's
in through the
grates
openings.
from the
Yeah.
road.
And then we cut back to Skanky having a conversation with Renta Ann. And I find this conversation really interesting because she's sitting there filling hollow points with garlic. And she's talking to Skanky, and she says that Skanky is bait because Nick would not be tempted by the money the way the other people are tempted by the money because his kind doesn't need money.
Right. Some of the phrasing that she uses.
Yeah. And so she asks Skanky, she's like, what's it like working with someone like him? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she goes, discretion. Is that really warranted at this point?
So why me?
I knew that your partner couldn't be lured with money. This kind doesn't need money, do they? I wonder what that must be like.
What must be like?
Discretion, is it? Well, there's hardly any point, really.
It's like, oh, did this woman just call Skanky out for knowing what Nick is and lying for him?
Or does Skanky actually not know? Skanky has to know.
Skanky has to know. There is absolutely no way. It's like I was reading an interview with the guy or some of the people who work on Superman. And they were talking about how Lois Lane in the comics eventually figures out who Superman is.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because to continue hiding it from her would have made her seem dumb.
Yes.
Because it had been so long and there had been so many coincidental incidences that there's no way she could continue to not put the pieces together and still be considered an intelligent character. And I think that's Skanky. Because there's definitely some parts in this where he is acting as if he knows what Nick is.
Right. Like all the yelling.
Yeah, talking out loud to himself.
Right.
Loudly. Almost as if he knows
Like
his partner
a human
has really good
wouldn't
hearing.
be able to hear him talking from across this warehouse.
Right.
But some supernatural detective partner, well, yeah, I just need to get a signal to him.
Yeah. Yeah, but Renta Ann calls him out. She's like, oh, really? Are we going to lie for him? Okay. I guess that's how we're going to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she puts a bomb under his chair. And she's like, don't move around too much. And she just gives him a kiss and leaves. Because Nick has finally gotten as far in the sewers as he can get. And he gets out and she's waiting for him. And she's like, well, hello.
Good to see you.
And she shoots him in the face. And he's like, ow. And he has a scarf.
stings.
He has like a scratch from it for the rest of it. And this scene I always thought was weird. I mean, it's not a bad scene. Definitely there's some where he does the like hand out, like come to me thing when he's trying to hypnotize her. It's pretty cool. But this part always seemed odd to me because he doesn't say anything for so long. He comes out of the sewers and it's a good 5 minutes of dialogue before he starts responding to her.
Mm-hmm.
She's just talking at him for like 5 minutes.
Right. And like he's just stunned,
And
like
he's
absorbing
just
information.
standing there. He tries to run at her and he gets caught by the light and he like darts back into the light and then gives her this really angry look like, no, I just want to go home. And she's like, oh, well, let me go ahead and tell you all about my scheme and all about how I figured out what you are and all about like, well, you just glare at me. And then he tries hypnotizing her and he actually tries twice. The first time is really obvious.
And it almost works.
And it almost works. And the second time he tries to go real subtle. And unless we heard the heartbeat, we wouldn't know really that he was trying to do it because he's trying to relate to her and get her to fall under his spell.
Right.
Which this is how Lacroix hypnotizes people. We haven't gotten to the episodes where he does it yet, but this is a LaCroix technique where he's just talking to them and then all of a sudden you start to hear the heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like Nick does where he just stares at them straight in the face and he's like, you don't remember anything?
Right. Just
Yeah.
direct commands.
It's more of like I'm persuading you with a little psychic push.
Right.
And so that's what he tries to do the second time around. And in the meantime, Skanky is like, I'm so sorry, Myra. I'll take you on that vacation. I'll stop teasing you. I really hope I get out of this. Like, I really wish that wasn't the last conversation I had with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of sad,
Yeah.
but sweet at the same time. But he does manage to get into the factory. Nick manages to get into the factory. And he pauses for a moment to remember that last moment in his flashback after he had found and killed the hunter. And he has this really it's one of the more brutal killing scenes that we get,
Right.
where he's untying this guy's neck scarf and he's like, you know why I'm doing
Right.
this.
He's got him pinned.
Yeah.
And he's just monologuing to him
Yeah.
while removing his
He's
scarf.
like, you're a hunter. You know why I'm doing this. You understand where I'm coming from. You know. I'm still going to kill you, but I understand and respect you. And I'm also going to untie your scarf very dramatically while I'm hissing in your ear. It's pretty monstrous.
Yes.
And they, they're all done. They're all standing up. They do the mouth wipe, just drink a guy. And then they fly off. They're like, well, it's getting late. This was fun. I'm ready to go home, kick my feet up, turn back on the television, whatever. Nice outing. Thanks, LaCroix. And Nick lingers for a moment. And the hunter's wife shows up. And she's like, hello. And then she sees him dead on the ground and she starts crying. And we see Nick looking very sad behind a tree, which if this is 1830s-ish,
this might be the beginning of the arc to where he finally leaves.
Yeah. You know what I want to see? A fan edit where we take all of the flashbacks and put them in chronological order and put them together in one single movie.
The narrative of Nick kind of growing out of LaCroix.
Yeah. I think that'd be really interesting to see, because then you would see he has peaks and valleys. Mm-hmm. He has times when he's guilt-ridden and he has times when he's not. And then we're in a guilt-ridden phase right now. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see somebody cut all of the flashbacks out and make one long thing. And they're only if you probably chunk them all together, they're probably only 5 to 7 minutes of actual screen time per episode, except for 1966. So all told, it would probably be 3 or 4 hours, maybe, if that.
Mm-hmm.
3, less than 3. Anyway, you hear me, universe? That's what I would like. I have requested it. But Renta Ann is still hunting him, and they're walking around the factory equipment. We hear her pontificating because she has recorded her manifesto on tape, and she's got it playing in different locations.
And she's left in multiple places, yeah.
Yeah, and if you actually listen to it, it's wild. It's all those lovers that I killed they were just me finding myself, as one does. And it's whatever. And she ends up dropping holy water on him, which I think he just hisses and backs away because somebody dropped something on his fucking head. He's just oh God, what was that? And then she throws Molotov cocktails at him, which are far more effective because, as we know, fire bad. Fire
Unless you're LaCroix.
Unless you're LaCroix, and then fire
It's
whatever.
an inconvenience.
Yeah. And he ends up running up the stairs because he hears Skanky. And he's zeroing in because Skanky is loudly talking to himself. He's loudly exclaiming stuff as a way, I think, of helping Nick find
Oh,
it.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. He's letting Nick know where he is because he knows that Nick will come save him.
Right. And there's crosses planted at the top. And he actually does back up from the crosses. And she's like, oh, interesting. That one works. Huh.
I thought that was a myth.
I thought that one was a myth. And she starts shooting him. And she also says, what will you give me if I let you live? And he's like, a taste of hell. And she ends up shooting him. And every time she shoots him, he backs up a little bit. And they kind of have a conversation. And she realizes he's a vampire with a conscience. And that's why he hasn't won yet. And blah, blah, blah. And she ends up shooting him. And he falls off the side of the platform. And when she goes over to look down,
Surprise, motherfucker.
He's gone. He gone. And she's like, oh, shit. So she runs back to where Skanky is. And she runs in the room, and Skanky starts yelling helpful information.
Yep.
He's like, Nick, she's in the room. Nick, she turned off the lights. Nick, she's got night vision goggles on. And Nick bursts in from outside because she's blackened out this window
Right.
to make it dark in there. And he comes in. He has snuck around on the sunlit exterior, and he comes in from the outside, and he ends up blinding her. And he uses the shadow behind Skanky to try to free Skanky, and she shoots a crossbow at him, but he just catches it
And breaks it.
just stop. You're embarrassing yourself. And then he ends up freeing Skanky, and they flee, and she runs after them and trips. And then she looks over and sees the
timer on the bomb.
The timer on the bomb is about
runs
to
out.
go off, and she goes, "Oh!" And then it explodes, and that's the end of Rent to Anne. And we never find out anything more about her. Duty done. And then we go to the morgue for our wrap up because Natalie is treating Nick's wounds, and she asks him if the irritation has stopped. And this is the scene I have referenced probably 6 times in our podcast so far, which is, if by that you mean the feeling of 1,000 scorpions stinging me, then yes, the irritation has stopped.
The last of the garlic. Has the irritation stopped?
If by irritation you mean the feeling that 1,000 scorpions had stung me all at once, yes, thank you very much. The irritation has stopped.
You know, I can't believe how fast your burns healed.
I want to see Nick and Skanky's report of
Their after
what
action
happened
report. Maybe they just
with
agreed
Skank-
to not
talk about it.
just not talk about it.
Just say, "Hey, we found her."
Yeah,
Like,
she
this is
she must have blown herself up. Darndest thing. Well, what are the crosses and the why is this building on
Maybe-
fire and shit?
maybe Nick cleaned all that up.
Yeah, maybe he went back, took all the crosses down. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they would write that shit up. Be like,
How
well,
did
then,
you find this place?
then I got a
Like, do they tell Cohen that Skanky got kidnapped because the hunter was hunting Nick?
yeah, because he was a vampire. Exactly.
Because
There is no way they can write this shit up. They had to go to a coffee shop afterwards
and work out their story.
get Skanky calm down, and then they had to work out what they were going to say, and then they had to go write the report.
Mm-hmm.
Or Nick had to hypnotize Skanky, which he clearly doesn't, because when Skanky comes into the morgue, he says, "I spent the better part of the morning strapped to a tactical nuclear warhead," which he was actually only on there for half an hour because that's how long Nick had, but that's fine.
Right.
And when I called Myra to tell her about it, I didn't get even 2 words before she starts telling me about the whales again. So clearly he didn't erase his memory. So
Right.
Skanky remembers everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Nick filed no report. I mean, he didn't call and tell anybody this had happened.
Right. This was limited to just Nick and Skanky.
Yeah.
They were both finishing up their shift and leaving for the day, and then everything happened within half an hour after Nick left for the day.
Maybe they
So-
just wrote it up as she wanted to hunt a cop.
Or like Nick was there,
Yeah.
and so she realized, okay, this is a dangerous
I mean, they could
person.
have framed it as like because he stepped in and stopped her last time. It was a revenge thing.
Right.
But they would have had to get that straight ahead of time.
Right.
Especially after Skanky sat there and listened to her talk about Nick's kind and watched her
Right.
fill hollow points with garlic.
Right. At this point, Skanky
Yeah.
has to know.
He has to know.
Like, just Nick bursting in through the window?
Yeah. The second
How
story
did
window.
he get there?
Get to the window. Exactly. Why does he actually sizzle in the sunlight? Because he would have been covered with burns after he came
Yeah.
through the window like that. And Natalie even says, your burns have healed up really well. And she's like, why did you do that? And he's like, well, I had to do something unexpected because she thought she knew what I was going to do. So I had to do something completely different. And then this is when Skanky walks in. And then Nick has the absolute gall to have this really flirty moment with Natalie. Dude, you are sending some really fucking mixed signals. Because
Don't
he's like,
string her along.
I'm just here to see my doc. And that's when Skanky is like, well, I tried talking to Myra. She talked my ear off. She didn't even care. I almost got blown up after I was so worried I was never going to talk to her again. And Natalie's like, well, you could stay here. There's plenty of room. Like the other residents wouldn't
You need
mind.
a place to lay down?
And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll just pull up a slab. Thanks, Natalie. And he goes, well, you got some dark humor. And Nick's like, yeah, but
I kind of like it dark.
I like it dark. And then he kisses her.
Peck on the cheek.
Nick. And then he gives her this flirty little smile when he leaves.
Before mating time.
Yeah, well, it's a long story. At least when I was sitting on that bomb, I had a few minutes to think.
Well, Skank, it's very peaceful around here. You could just find a nice place to lie down. I'm sure the others wouldn't mind.
Oh, thank you, Natalie. I think I'll just pull up a nice cold slab. She's got a real twisted sense of humor.
It's a little dark, yeah. But then I like dark. Bye.
Hey, you like dark, huh? Then you would enjoy some candlelight bowling.
Dude, not cool. I mean, cool if this is what continues.
If you're actually going to follow through on
right,
something.
but not like I need to throw her a bone so she'll stay on my side, because that's what it feels like. Like, oh, maybe she's waffling a little bit. I need to just reel her back in a little bit, but not all the way in, because I don't want to land this fish. I just want to keep it on the line.
Right.
Wild. And that is the end of Hunted. Not to be confused with Hunters, which was a previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember you getting it mixed up.
Yeah. I'm really glad we're back. We had some Skanky Nick time.
Mm-hmm.
Because it sets us up for the next episode where we really are going to test our friendship again. So I'm glad we had a moment of
foreshadowing.
reestablishment before moving into the next episode. Also, this is one of our rare flashbacks that's not like, how is LaCroix going to fuck Nick over this time? It's more of a family bonding experience that backfired on LaCroix yet again, because it showed Nick the repercussions.
Right.
Of
It
this
exposed
moment
him
of
to the
fun.
human connection.
Yeah. So yet again, everything LaCroix does ends up just hammering home to Nick how much he doesn't want to be a vampire. And I think we talked about everything we wanted to talk about as it went on. So,
Yeah. So we have an Instagram.
Oh yeah, we do. We have an Instagram. It's up to 200 followers.
Woo!
And when we do the big switch, I'm sorry, I don't have the energy to have multiple Instagram accounts. So we will still only have one Instagram account.
Which I think is fine.
It's fine. And it's the Strange and Beautiful Book Club. But I think I'm going to change it to the Strange and Beautiful Network. But it won't matter. You'll stay followed. If you're already following me, so you should probably go ahead and do that. And we're going to have, we have our Patreon. But once in July, when everything shakes out, we're going to have a lot more stuff going on the Patreon. So this would be a good time to get in on the ground floor and join. Most of the posts that I put on Patreon are actually public. So all you have to do is follow me. You don't even have to pay anything to see what I put up. We do have some things that I put up that are behind the paywall, but for the most part, my just general blogging stuff is public. So that's, again, Strange and Beautiful Book Club. If you want to boogie over to Patreon and join that. I'm also working on the website, actively working on the website. So we might actually have a functioning website soon. I'm very excited. And in the meantime, if you wanted to email us recommendations, you could do that. You just send it to thehosts@strangeandbeautiful.club. I think that about covers it.
All right. So remember, sometimes the strangest things are the most beautiful too.
So be who you are and love what you love. Until next time, friends.
Bye.
Bye.